Why can Korean suspense films become mainstream globally? Besides the depiction of human darkness, the creativity of Korean screenwriters is the core of a film becoming a masterpiece. Just yesterday in 2016, Korea released another high-rated thriller, Only God Knows Everything. In its first week of release, the film received a high rating of 8.4 and won 10 awards at 10 international film festivals, including Toronto and Busan last year. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and tag your bored friends. Tell them that Sister Hua has corpses and police to watch here. The story begins on a pitch-black night. In the outskirts of Seoul, a panicked man drives to a remote forest. After ensuring no one is around, he drags a tightly wrapped human-shaped object from the trunk.
During the dragging process, the plastic wrap covering the body was accidentally pulled open, revealing a woman who was just a bit more beautiful than Hua Ji.
The next morning, the missing woman made the front-page headlines in Korea. The woman's name is Woo Soo-jun, a 30-year-old single mother. However, this is not the first similar disappearance case recently. As early as 3 months ago, 2 single mothers mysteriously disappeared, leaving their children behind. Some investigators found that the missing persons had contact with a certain cult before disappearing, but due to the lack of any clues, the police cannot close the case. The bizarre disappearance case ultimately became a cold case, unresolved. Time swiftly moved to 13 years later at a church in Seoul, South Korea, where 3 elderly priests were selecting a new candidate. The chosen man was named Park Guk-chang, a top graduate from the seminary. Old Park was not only excellent in character and academics, but also very composed in his dealings. 3 years ago, he was sent by the elder priest Kim Jang-bok to churches in places like Busan for training and learning. Now that Old Park has returned from his training, Old Kim is preparing to make him a priest and send him to the Jeongjadong Church in Gyeonggi-do to serve as a priest. When questioned by the bishop of the Seoul district, Old Park gave a firm response. Shiman hamai. Under the witness of God, Old Park successfully became an honorable priest. However, Old Park did not know that this appointment journey would change his life. Recognized, Old Park hurried to the church he was to succeed. Although the church was not large, it had many followers. On his first day, a follower came to confess, and Old Park, neatly dressed, went to the confessional, ready to listen to the follower's confession. But just upon meeting, the believer asked if Old Park had heard about the recent disappearance case. The believer seemed to know the reason behind the disappearance case. Not only did he know who did it, but he also said he was involved. Hearing the man's confession, Old Park was taken aback. But before he could speak, the man suddenly changed the subject. Hearing the man's question, Old Park was momentarily stunned. However, before he could regain his composure, the man hurriedly ran out of the confessional. When Old Park chased after him, he found the man had already reached the corner not far away, and he quickly followed. The reason Old Park was so agitated was that the woman the man mentioned, Oh Suk-jin, was his mother. 13 years ago, his mother abandoned young Old Park and left home, mysteriously disappearing ever since. Due to the lack of any clues, his mother's disappearance became a cold case. Hearing news about his mother again, Old Park couldn't hide his excitement. He went through a small alley and arrived at an intersection, but just as he was about to continue the chase, a car suddenly blocked his way. By the time the car left, the man had already disappeared. Frustrated, Old Park could only turn back to the church. In the corridor, Old Park encountered the nun who had just sought him for confession. He remembered that confessions at the church were registered. With a mindset of giving it a try, Old Park inquired about the man's identity. To Old Park's surprise, the nun not only knew this believer, but also knew his address. Early the next morning, Old Park rode his bicycle to Lee Jun-ho's house. He knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no response from inside. Old Park thought the person wasn't home and planned to come back at noon. Just as he was about to turn around, a loud noise suddenly came from inside the house. Hearing a strange noise, Old Park thought it was Lee Jun-ho avoiding him. He went to the backyard to see what was happening. As he approached the glass, he saw someone hurriedly leaving the room. He thought the shadow was Lee Jun-ho. To find out about his mother, Old Park didn't care about anything else. He opened the window and entered the apartment through the back window. As soon as he got inside, Old Park found a strange grey mark at the doorway, and inside the room, he saw Lee Jun-ho. However, Old Park called out twice, but the man on the bed did not respond at all. Discovering that Lee Jun-ho was still breathing, Old Park hurriedly performed resuscitation. After a few minutes of effort, Lee Jun-ho, who was foaming at the mouth, finally responded. Just when Old Park thought he had succeeded, Lee Jun-ho suddenly coughed up blood. Realizing something was wrong, Old Park rushed him to the hospital and called the police. Fortunately, he was taken to the hospital in time, and Lee Jun-ho was still breathing. While waiting for emergency treatment at the hospital, a woman who was not as pretty as Sister Hua approached. The woman claimed her name was Sister Yi, an agent of Street View. Old Park did not hide anything and told Sister Yi the whole story. As for why he appeared in Lee Jun-ho's apartment, it was because of a confession. Due to privacy concerns, he couldn't disclose the content of the confession to Sister Yi. At that moment, a colleague brought over a woman. The woman was Lee Jun-ho's sister, but she was deaf and mute. Fortunately, Old Park had learned sign language and helped with the translation. But just as the questioning ended, Lee Jun-ho's sister gave Lao Pu a meaningful look. By the time Lao Pu finished the investigation, it was already evening. Exhausted, he returned to the church, but as soon as he entered, he found a document placed on his desk. Thinking it was church-related, he casually opened it. But just as he was looking down to check, a door closing sound suddenly came from the hallway. Lao Pu turned around and saw someone leaving from the doorway. He chased after, only to find that the person leaving was actually Lee Jun-ho's sister. Using the contact information left by the woman, Old Park got in touch with her. From her, Old Park learned that the reason Lee Jun-ho ended up like this was all because of two people named Baek Soo-won and Ko Moon-chul. They are members of a cult organization, deceiving followers everywhere, not only swindling money but also using various means to control followers, turning them into their puppets. The sister suspects that her brother's murder must be related to this cult organization. Looking at the information on the table, Old Park thought of his mother. Could his mother's disappearance also be related to this organization? He immediately investigated the cult organization the woman mentioned. Meanwhile, as Lao Pu was busy, Sister Yi also found the mother of the missing college student Xiao Jun, Aunt May. Aunt May provided the police with Xiao Jun's diary from before he disappeared, but it contained trivial content with no clues. Unwilling to give up, Aunt May also presented a photo and a tape recorder. Xiao Jun frequently interacted with the woman in the photo before he disappeared. Besides that, he withdrew all the money from his card before disappearing. Aunt May suspects her son's disappearance might be related to the woman, possibly tricked into going to the Philippines. Because there have been many rumors online recently, Sister Yi thinks it's unlikely, as there are no exit records for Xiao Jun in immigration. Aunt May wants Sister Yi to find her son because she has a terminal illness and doesn't have long to live. Hearing Aunt May's words, Sister Yi was taken aback. She carefully examined the materials provided by Aunt May, and while checking the recorder, Sister Yi discovered some clues. The content in the recorder was not songs, but some anti-Christian propaganda. Looking at the markings on the recorder, Sister Yi thought of the Lee Jun-ho case. She had also found similar markings when investigating the other party's home. Meanwhile, to investigate his mother's matter, Old Park found the Sister Bai mentioned by Lee Jun-ho's sister. Sister Bai is the owner of a restaurant, and although she is over 40, she still retains her charm. Old Park pretended to be a customer and ordered a kimchi rice dish. During the meal, a man carrying some ingredients walked in. This man was Old Gao. Seeing Lao Gao, Sister Bai and he entered the kitchen. As soon as they entered, Lao Pu faintly heard strange sounds. Curious, he leaned closer and discovered Sister Bai was humiliating Lao Gao. And Lao Gao was not angry. Instead, he knelt on the ground, allowing Bai Jie to humiliate him. The absurd scene reminded Lao Pu of the information from Lee Jun-ho's sister. A few minutes later, Bai Jie left the room as if nothing had happened. Just as Bai Jie came out, the phone on the counter rang.
I really want to. really guessed wrong and just died.
Upon hearing the inquiry on the other end of the phone, Sister Bai looked flustered and hurriedly hung up. Seeing Sister Bai's reaction, Old Park confirmed the other party's identity. Early the next morning, while Old Park was praying in the church, Sister Yi suddenly arrived at the church. She took out a surveillance video, and the footage showed Sister Bai humiliating Xiaojun in a restaurant. Xiaojun not only didn't resist, but even obediently knelt on the ground. In the latter part of the surveillance, Li Junho approached Sister Bai with something. Seeing the respectful demeanor of the two, Old Park recalled the scene from last night. Sister Yi wanted to know the content of Li Junho's confession, which might be related to the disappearance case. However, upon seeing the surveillance, Old Park still refused to provide the confession details. It wasn't that he didn't want to cooperate with the police, but he was worried that the police investigation would alert Bai Ji and others, and if they fled, he wouldn't be able to continue his investigation. Seeing the look in Old Park's eyes, Sister Yi thought he was afraid of retaliation from the cult. She was just about to persuade him when she suddenly received a call from her partner.
Jinjinere has always been involved in the round and round play event after all. What is it? In 2009, Shongjudo has always been living in peace. Shongjudo, at 15 years old, the mother disappeared, leaving the child.
Before disappearing, the pattern is similar. Tell me more in detail. The child was sick, and in trying to cure them, they went around here and there, eventually getting involved in religion. But this...
Look up some information. I'm here with Nohu for a bit.
Yes, Senior, but that child's name...
The name was Jongdo in that hospital back then.
Upon learning that the disappearance case from over 10 years ago was related to Old Park, Sister Yi instantly understood why Old Park was unwilling to provide the confession content. She hurried back to the police station and reviewed the files from that year. Besides Wu Shuzhen's disappearance case, there were 3 other disappearance cases that were very similar to Xiaojun's case. While examining the files, Sister Yi once again noticed the symbol on the recorder. She looked up this symbol and discovered it was the emblem of a church called Almighty God. This organization has been in Korea for over 20 years. On Wu Shuzhen's file, Yiji found a business card, and she went to the area according to the address on the card. But when Yiji arrived nearby, she discovered that the address on the card was actually a bar. Yiji thought the address on the card had moved, but upon entering the bar, she found it wasn't an ordinary bar. The bar was dimly lit, with strange decorations everywhere. From a woman's mouth, she learned that this was actually a master's fortune-telling place. Pretending to be a customer, she found this so-called master, but at first glance, the master recognized her as a police officer.
The list of unselected people can all be accepted.
Upon discovering her identity was exposed, Yiji did not hesitate and swiftly subdued the so-called master, taking him back to the police station. Yiji produced several files from over a decade ago, all containing records about the master and the Almighty God. However, when faced with police questioning, the master not only refused to cooperate, but also mocked Yiji, bringing up her previous miscarriage. And looking at the arrogant master, Sister Yi also got angry. Just as she was about to use a great memory recovery technique, her partner, Old Zheng, suddenly arrived at the interrogation room.
I accept this new role.
Found the corpse.
Upon learning that the police had actually found Wu Shuzhen's body, Yiji was also taken aback. It turned out that after discovering the connection between Wu Shuzhen's disappearance and Xiaojun's disappearance, Lao Zheng re-investigated the case based on the information from back then. He quickly found a body near the forest of the Almighty God Church. Lao Zheng asked Yiji to find Lao Pu, saying he could handle the charlatan himself. However, despite Lao Zheng's confidence, the master still refused to cooperate. At the same time, Lao Pu, who received the call, also arrived at the police station, and Yiji informed him of the police's findings. Upon learning that his mother had passed away 13 years ago, Lao Pu was somewhat disappointed, but not too surprised. In fact, he had already sensed this outcome since the day his mother disappeared. What Lao Pu couldn't accept was the cause of his mother's death. According to the forensic investigation, the mother was killed by a sharp weapon cutting her throat, and the killer's method was very professional, severing the throat with one stroke. As for whether the killer is a follower of Almighty God or that master, the police currently have no evidence. However, it is certain that all the missing persons became followers of Almighty God after contacting that master. In addition, during the investigation, Yiji also discovered a situation. The missing victims all shared a common characteristic.
I open my hand.
Was suffering from an illness or something. What are you saying now?
Mother. They took them to prayer centers or temples, or did they draw a cross and a talisman at the same time at home?
There is a problem, so...
So, are you asking if your mother got involved in a cult?
It's a misunderstanding, Master.
Hearing Yiji's words, Old Park thought of the scene when he went to Lee Junho's residence that day. There was a cross and that symbol at the entrance. As for whether it was inside his house, Old Park couldn't quite remember. However, he did recall that he had a very serious illness when he was young, and his mother traveled across the country to hospitals for treatment. But the doctors were helpless. After his mother disappeared, his illness was miraculously cured. Although it felt somewhat surreal, Old Park did not believe that Sister Bai could cure him. To cooperate with the police investigation, he told Sister Yi about Lee Junho's confession that day and what the other party's sister had told him. The two summarized the previous investigation and quickly concluded that Sister Bai is the leader of this cult organization. Lao Gao, Lee Junhao, Xiao Jun, and others are followers. She might deceive these followers into joining Almighty God by claiming she can cure diseases and ultimately swindle their money through mind control.
Don't you understand? Not now.
In reality, all my financial transaction records have been verified.
Wait.
Old Park speculated that the missing Xiaojun might have met with misfortune, and if they could find relevant clues, they could bring Baiji and others to justice. But Baiji was very cautious, leaving no clues at all. Thinking of this, Old Park remembered that master, believing he might be a breakthrough and perhaps could provide some clues. Yijai also thought it made sense. To assist with the investigation, the police released the master due to insufficient evidence. Before leaving the police station, the mysterious master suddenly returned to normal. Old Park pretended to be a customer seeking a fortune-telling session with the master, but as soon as he arrived at the shop, he found the master waiting for him. The master seemed to have guessed Old Park's identity and knew he was there to find his mother, but the master advised Old Park to stop searching, warning that if he persisted, it would lead to someone's death.
If you keep searching,
It ends only when one neck is cut.
However, upon hearing the master's advice, Lao Pu still refused to give up. He wanted to find out why his mother was deceived into joining the cult, why she was brutally killed, and who killed her. Seeing Lao Pu's stubbornness, the master, who had been calm just moments ago, suddenly changed his expression. He took the opportunity to knock over Lao Pu and pulled out a guillotine from the side. However, the master overestimated himself, as Lao Pu did not show any weakness and quickly turned the tables, subduing the master.
calm down. If you calm down, I will let go.
Why did you suddenly achieve it, young man?
That's why I'm asking you now.
Did they have memories of those people too?
That's why I came to ask you to tell me where those guys are.
Hearing what Lao Pu said, the master stopped what he was doing and surprisingly agreed to help Lao Pu. The reason for the master's sudden change of attitude was not a matter of conscience, but because he had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. He wanted to do something before he passed away. At that moment, Lao Pu received a text message from Yijie, saying that Bai Jie and her husband were driving to the bar. The master took out a set of clothes and told Lao Pu to put them on quickly. He instructed Lao Pu not to speak no matter what he saw, and soon he would know everything he wanted to know. Before long, Sister Bai arrived at the bar with her husband, and surprisingly, Xiao Jun, who had been missing for half a month, was with them. As soon as she entered the room, Sister Bai saw Lao Pu and recognized him from the previous visit to the restaurant.
Who?
Helper. I'm like this because I'm a friend who knows well.
Hearing the master's explanation, Sister Bai didn't think much. Led by the master, they went to the basement, and the dazed Xiao Jun was placed on a bed. Sister Bai told Xiao Jun not to worry. As long as he went to another world, his mother's terminal illness could be cured. Under Sister Bai's reassurance, Xiao Jun actually obediently closed his eyes. Lao Gao took out a handkerchief with a sedative and covered Xiao Jun's face. Before long, Xiao Jun on the bed passed out. Sister Bai turned to look at the master. The master picked up a machete nearby and began gesturing around Xiao Jun. However, holding the machete, he hesitated to make a move. Seeing the indecisive master, Sister Bai couldn't help but mock him a bit. It turns out the master is also a follower of Sister Bai. Sister Bai deceived the master, saying that if he helped her kill people, he could use the lives of others to redeem his own sins. The more people killed, the more redemption gained. The master believed Sister Bai and acted as an executioner for her, killing several followers. Initially, the master had unwavering faith in Sister Bai, but after he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, he realized that the so-called redemption did not exist at all, and Sister Bai was just deceiving everyone. Halfway through speaking, the master suddenly pointed the knife at Old Pooh. In a panic, Old Pooh backed away. Just as he reached outside, a sudden thunderclap boomed in the sky. Seeing the master dead, Lao Gao in the room also panicked. Lao Pu, who finally reacted, understood everything. It turned out that his mother believed in Bai Jie to treat him. He found it ridiculous. If Bai Jie truly had such miraculous powers, then no one in this world would die. Hearing Lao Pu's mockery, Bai Jie suddenly picked up the knife from the ground and swung it at Lao Pu. Unexpectedly, Lao Pu didn't dodge and just stood still. Listening to Lao Pu's prayer, Lao Gao, who already felt guilty, actually knelt down. Lao Pu told Lao Gao that if he wanted redemption, he had to make a sacrifice. Saying this, he looked at Bai Jie. Lao Gao unexpectedly rushed over, knocked Bai Jie down, and suffocated her to death with a plastic bag from the ground. After more than 10 years of brainwashing, it turns out that Lao Gao had come to fully believe Bai Jie's words. Now, as Lao Pu prayed in Bai Jie's manner, he actually believed that killing Bai Jie would bring redemption. After getting rid of Bai Jie, Lao Gao took her body back to the forest from over 10 years ago and buried her in a large pit. Meanwhile, the police took advantage of Bai Jie's visit to a bar to search the restaurant. In the restaurant, they found a list of church members, which surprisingly included hundreds of believers. These believers had been drained of their savings by Sister Bai and then brutally killed, some disguised as missing persons, others as suicides. Among these believers were desperate mothers, desperate fathers, and even underage children. Because the believers were mostly from single-parent families, almost all the relatives of the believers died shortly after the believers themselves, so no one reported to the police. The police could only find the missing persons cases of Wu Shuzhen and a few women, and the money taken from the believers was used by Sister Bai for beauty treatments and extravagance. Seeing the records on the list, the police showed a sighing expression. They couldn't believe that anyone would be foolish enough to believe in a charlatan like Sister Bai. In South Korea, there are over 200 similar cult organizations. According to incomplete statistics, hundreds of people die because of this every year. At the end of the story, the police arrested Lao Gao and rescued Xiaojun. Lao Pu returned to the church and wholeheartedly became a priest. The above is the entire content of the latest 2026 Korean thriller, Only God Knows Everything. Overall, the quality of the movie is quite good. The suspense and thriller atmosphere in the first half are well set up, but the ending feels a bit rushed. Old Gao turned against them just after a few words from Old Park. Then again, those who can be fooled by a cult usually have something wrong with their minds, so this ending isn't without reason. Alright, that's it for today's sharing. See you next time.